My name is Joshua Vonderhyde, and I am here with the one and only Michael Burritt, Distinguished Professor of Percussion at the Eastman School of Music. And MJB, we are so honored. We're so excited to have you here today. Thanks for being on the podcast. And I want to get started right away. If you could just let us know about your early musical background, when you first, had this experience with percussion, when you knew you wanted to major in percussion and music, the whole kind of beginning of your timeline. Love to hear about that.
Sure. Well, first of all, great to be on with you, Josh. Thanks for inviting me and appreciate all the great work you guys are doing. It's nice to be a part of this. Well, I mean, for me, I guess I have to go back to when I was really young in a way, because I was fortunate. Both my parents were musicians. My father actually he was my band director when I got older, but when I was really young, they both played in the Syracuse Symphony, where I grew up in Syracuse, New York. I used to run around those rehearsals and stuff when I was real little. And then my mother was a clarinetist and taught clarinet in the house forever. My dad, again, was the band director, and he was actually a very successful music educator in New York for many, many years. And I think I just had music in the house all the time. So we used to I remember growing up listening to everything from like Beethoven to like the Carpenters and Chicago and Copeland and, you name it. And then, of course, my father was a huge fan, so I grew up listening to the records of the Eastman Wind Ensemble, and not knowing much as a kid, but hearing that was like a big thing. And so I had all this kind of when I was quite young, and I used to run around my father's marching band rehearsals, and I would memorize like all the snare drum parts as a kid. Probably when I was like, gosh, I'm trying to think, probably like even like a sixth grader or something, or even before I started taking, even before I was taking lessons, which I think I started in fourth grade, sort of memorizing in my own sort of, not great, I'm sure it wasn't way, but I could play some of the licks and sticks and everything. So I think I just kind of fell in love with both music and even just playing the drums. Mm-hmm. Little, and really loved it. I remember one moment when I was young that was kind of special to me. I was an eighth grader. I think I was an eighth grader, and they do like they do all county auditions, so mm-hmm. Audition for all county, and I remember like taking like I had to learn this multiple percussion solo and all this stuff, and I went and played. And my father, because he was an educator, could always get the information, the results on these things early. Okay. So I remember that night he said, "Hey, I got the results." And my mother was like, "What happened?" And he comes and he goes, "Hey, guess what? You got first in the county." And I was like, "I got first in the county." I was like, "Wow, man."
Okay.
Bam. Yeah, I got, wow. It was almost like something I couldn't really believe. So I was like, "This is cool." And then right after that point, I think I just, when you're a kid, I think this is really important for kids. This is why things like music and having activities, athletics and things like that they do are super important, because you have to have something in a way when you're young and trying to figure things out that you hang your hat on, something that you can feel like, this is who I am, this is what I do. And of course, then you get a friend group from that. But so that was kind of like, I'm pretty good at this. So And then I just thought, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a performer. And I always liked being in front of people. I wasn't a shy guy. And so, yeah, that was sort of like a really early moment of like, I'm going to do this. And I think I just decided that I'm going to be a performer. That was what I wanted to do. And I had great teachers in high school, the Syracuse Symphony, Herb Flower, and a guy actually before him that taught me really great basics with stick control. I remember using this old Emil Scholey book, Here's the Drum, Volume 1 and 2. Emil Scholey is a percussionist that used to be a percussionist in Cleveland Orchestra. I didn't know this at the time, but he wrote some books. And he actually wrote a book called The Roll that I still use, actually, Emil Scholey. But it was great. I had really great chin. I remember like stick control every week and having to count out loud on my etudes and, all that stuff, kind of learning some really good fundamentals that I think have really paid dividends. My Will Coxon book and learning the Pratt book and doing all that stuff. And then learning Goward Whaley 2 mallet things and whatever it was. I was really fortunate in that way. So, but, after that, when I was in high school, I was doing well. I made All-State, all this stuff. I was kind of a drummer more than I was a mallet player for sure. I played mallets because I had to. And my snare drum chops kind of helped me a bit. I have some funny stories about four mallet grips and how I learned it and all that. That's another story I could tell you. But anyways, I decided I was going to go into music. I knew I was going to do that. And at the time, this was like the winter of 1980. This was like back in the early days of the Reagan administration, years ago. Most people don't remember, of course. And because I was in upstate New York, and at the time, I think around the country, people by and large auditioned regionally because you didn't have the internet and you weren't as in touch with school. So I was kind of an East Coast school thinking guy, and I auditioned at some local state schools, Ithaca College, which is too far from me, and Eastman. And Eastman was the place I wanted to go. And because I knew about it, I'd been there a couple times for concerts, and my father had made it seem like it was Mecca. And so I auditioned. And, one of the best things that ever happened to me was that I didn't get in,
Wow.
which is an interesting story, right? I got waitlisted. And I was like, wow, what's going on? My bubble got burst. And it was like, wow, this is tough. And I didn't get off the wait list, but I ended up going to Ithaca first. And the good thing about that for me was that was the year that Gordon Stout started teaching there. So I went to Ithaca the year he started and learned a ton from him. And actually it was very good for me because I needed to really work on my keyboard chops. And I kind of fell in love with the marimba there with him at the time. And I kind of was also kind of enamored with this idea that he was a performer and a composer and did these things. And I liked the college teaching scene, but, I wasn't really sure. But after a couple of years, I transferred to Eastman from Ithaca. And Gordon, which I thought was really great of him, was the one that encouraged me. You got to get out of here and you got to go to Eastman. So I auditioned, and luckily there was a spot, and I got the spot. There was a transfer spot, which is really unusual. And I jumped in as a junior and did my undergrad, and then did my grad work here where I am now. Actually, where I am now, but with John Beck. And it was really, in some ways, I feel really, really fortunate that I actually had 2 years with Stout, who eventually actually played at my wedding, which is pretty funny, right? And then went to John Beck and had 2 different kinds of things and learned a lot actually from both of those experiences. And I'm super grateful for that. So, and then went on. I don't know how far am I supposed to go here? How much more do you need? Do you want to go on?
Well, the next question was an overview of percussion training and collegiate and all this stuff, which you kind of already went into, but maybe you could just talk about outside of the collegiate training, some other important experiences you had early on that really cemented maybe your pathway in a way.
Outside of the collegiate training. Well, I could say, when I one summer I went, like when I was at Eastman, I went to Chautauqua. That was fun.
Yeah.
And won the concerto competition, which was like, wow, they have a concerto with the orchestra there, and enjoyed doing that. Actually, my summer after my senior year, I was going to go to Aspen.
Yeah.
And I was all set to go to Aspen. And then this group that maybe you've never heard of this, it doesn't exist anymore. It existed for a long time. It was called the American Wind Symphony. And it was basically it was like a floating arts vessel that started in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then would travel around up and down either the Ohio River, the Mississippi, and do concerts. And I knew about that group because my father knew about that group because there's a lot of music commissioned for this wind band, kind of famous stuff. The conductor was a guy named Robert Austin Boudreau, was a trumpet player guy from Pittsburgh and had gone to Juilliard and whatever. He was a horrible conductor, but he was kind of an entrepreneur. And anyway, so I auditioned for this group too because they were coming through Eastman, and I was awarded the timpani and drum set position with this group. And my father said, you should go do that. And I said, well, I kind of want to go to Aspen. He goes, no, Aspen costs money. This group pays. You're going to go do that. So I was like, okay. So I didn't go to Aspen. I went on the American Wind Symphony tour, which was fun. I mean, the group was pretty good. I don't remember much about the quality now, but I was playing a ton of timpani. It was like 5 drums and all this tuning, and I got to play drum set, which was kind of fun for me. We played a ton of concerts. It was like 8 weeks of touring. But I met my wife, which was interesting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, on that. She was a flutist, and we met on that tour. And so that was kind of obviously more than anything else, that was the best thing about going on that tour. But
fairly important tour for you in your life, yeah, I would say.
But it was a good experience playing Washington because my timpani playing, even though I wasn't playing orchestral orchestra, I was playing a lot of timpani, and I was playing a lot of timpani. I was like driving a truck, tons of pedaling and a lot of stuff all the time. Yeah. Every concert was kind of fun with like fanfare for the common man, kind of fun. Then we did other stuff, So those were kind of things, and those were fun. But I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I thought I wanted, and actually after that, I thought I wanted to be a timpanist because of that summer. And I played a lot of timpani at Eastman, and John Beck was a timpanist, and certainly I thought that orchestral playing was what I should do. That was what meant success. And so I went back and did my master's degree at Eastman, and did it actually in 1 year because I was going to get married. And I was going to go. My wife ended up deciding to go to school at the Cleveland Institute, study with Jeff Kaner, who was the principal flutist, and I was now in Philadelphia. And I had checked in with Paul Yancich, who said, "Hey, yeah, I'd love to teach you. Let's come on, have some lessons." Anyway, long and the short of it, I don't want to bore people on YouTube here. Long and the short of it is I ended up getting a job a job at Kent State opened up, a professor job, like a part-time job.
Hmm.
They had called Eastman and said, "Hey, we have this opening. Who do you have?" They sent a couple names. They ended up picking my resume. I went in, auditioned, got this job, teaching part-time percussion at Kent State, which
Well,
actually worked out great because it was about 40 miles from Cleveland, and I could do this. And actually, it was quite near. My wife was kind of from a little town called Stowe, which is right next to Kent. And anyway, so it was her parents were there. Anyway, it worked out well, and I started teaching, and I was taking lessons with Paul. Paul was very encouraging to me. Like, this is great. You got to keep going. But I did a ton of freelancing there. I, was teaching at Kent. The Kent job after about a year became a full-time job, which was nice.
mhm.
And I kept doing that, and I kind of liked it. I thought, well, I'm pretty good at this. This teaching thing I kind of like. But I was doing a ton of, there was like a few studio things that were going on, some small studio gig things, kind of church related type studio gigs, but also I played a bunch of the orchestras around there. Like, there's Akron Canton Symphony, Youngstown Symphony, playing timpani a lot for those groups. I used to play timpani for the Robert Page singers. He was the choral conductor for the Cleveland Orchestra Choir, chorus,
Mhm.
whatever. And he had his own orchestra, and we would play like Messiah gigs and,
Yeah, sure.
Nelson Mass and stuff like that. So I had a lot going on, and I had a drum set thing going on with a jazz group. So I kind of liked this jack of all trades thing. It was really fun. I felt like, hey, I'm getting to use all my skills. I'm making money, and I enjoyed the teaching. And I was playing marimba. I was practicing, and I was doing some recital. I started writing some music for the fun of it because after a while I had played almost everything at the time
Mhm.
that had been written. This is even pre, like, this is right before Druckmann and Merlin and those pieces that are kind of staples now. They weren't even written yet. So this is
Right.
so I started doing that, and that was going well, and I enjoyed that. So I took lessons with Mike Rosen. I went over and said, I should play for Mike Rosen at Oberlin. I knew he was doing a lot of marimba himself, and I played. He was very encouraging. Invited me to do a recital at Oberlin. I thought, oh, this is cool. And I remember a couple of things. There's a couple of stories I'll tell you that are kind of fun, because I think you mentioned a question that's coming up. I'm previewing the questions here.
That's fine. Go for it.
There's a question coming up about like a big important point, or what
A
you call
defining moment in your life that had the most significant impact on your career.
horrible, like, late night talk show guest. But
You're fine.
anyways, two things that are kind of interesting. I remember going to study with Rosen, taking some lessons, and I remember bringing some Bach to him. I remember bringing Mirage to him, ironically. I remember bringing, whatever, my stuff. And I brought this piece I wrote. I had just written a piece called October Night, which is the first piece. For some reason, people still play the piece, which I think is nice. So, but I wrote it, and at the time, a lot of people thought, well, this is really cool and hard, and it was 19. And I brought it over to him, played it, and he was like, "This is great." And I remember finishing the lesson, and I played a bunch of stuff, and I said, "What should I, what is your advice? What should I do? Should I start commissioning pieces? Should I play more transcription? Should I try to keep writing more? What's the best thing to do if I want to sort of do some of the solo stuff as part of what I'm doing?" And he looks at me and goes, "You should do what you believe in." And I thought, I remember sitting there, in his office, in his studio. I was like, okay. And I was like, and I'm thinking, what the heck do I believe in? So I remember
Right.
driving home. I was driving home in my car. It was about 50 minutes from where I lived. I said, well, I believe in, I know, I really like the Dallas Cowboys, I
Right.
really, I believe in, all these things I believed in, it's like, what do I believe in? I don't know, so, and I remember thinking about that for a while, but something else happened not long after that, maybe a couple of years, right around that time. So I've been teaching for 2 or 3 years. That was going well. And when I played the recital at Oberlin, a representative from Musser came and asked me to play Musser and said, "Hey, I want you, give you this endorsement." I was like 25. I was like, "Oh, wow, an endorsement." I was like, okay. So I did this, and they would send me to, like, state conventions to do clinics, and it was
Mhm.
like kind of cool, And I remember Gordon Stout having done that, and Stevens. Well, Stevens was with Musser at the time too. I was like, I was the second tier guy to Stevens at the time. He was, but I was. So they brought me in, and I was doing that. So it was kind of interesting, and I was really enjoying the teaching, and I felt like, wow, this is really cool. And I was writing more music, and it's sort of gotten away. I don't know. I had not maybe taken lessons with Paul for about 6 months, and I was still freelancing and doing stuff, but I wasn't thinking about doing orchestral auditions anymore. I was thinking more about this other stuff I was doing, and I was kind of enjoying that and feeling like, So I get this message on my answering machine from Paul. This is back in the days when we had answering machines. This is maybe 1988 or 89. I don't remember the year. This message on my answering machine. I get home, Chris, my wife's like, "You got to listen to the answering machine." So it's Paul. Paul has kind of a high voice. "Hey, Mike, it's Paul." And then the first thing I thought was, he's calling me. I must owe him some money for lessons I didn't. So because I saw it, I was like, "Hey, you got to, oh yeah, sorry." So, but it was no, I was paid out. But he said, "Hey, we're having an audition for assistant timpani and fourth percussion,
Wow.
and I'm inviting 15 people or something.
Yeah.
I invite you to do this." And I was like, I remember hearing this message, and you get messages like that, and I got scared. I was like, "Oh my God," like and it was like, "Oh my gosh," this is crazy. Why is he inviting me? I don't have a chance at this. Is crazy. So I call him and I say, "Paul, this is really nice, but I haven't had a lesson in about 6 months, and I haven't been thinking about this." He said, "You could do this."
Mhm.
Mike, I'm only asking a few people. I'm asking, I'm inviting you. You should take this seriously. I said, "I'm taking it very seriously." I said, "But I'm not sure." He goes, "But he said, and he said, remember, it's also a lot of money we're talking about." I'm like, "I'm sure it is a lot of money. Look how
Yeah.
much I'm making now." And so I said, "Listen, let me think about this. Can I have the weekend?" He goes, "Take the weekend." And I said, "I really want you to know how much I was honored by this invitation." So I thought about it for the weekend. What do I want to do? Do I want to do this? It's just who I am. And I realized that it wasn't who I was anymore. Time when I would have been like, "Oh my gosh, I got to go do this. I got to do this." Even if I had done it, I wasn't going to win that audition. I mean, maybe somehow the stars aligned but no. But it was still very flattering. And,
Hmm.
the fact that he believed in me, was inviting me to this, that's just crazy for the Cleveland Orchestra. And I think he tells that story now and says, "Burritt's such a fool." No, but now
Right. Yeah.
and we stayed friends, and I used to go there and do master classes for Paul and Rich when they were there together.
That's nice. Yeah.
But anyways, it was like one of those like defining moments where I realized, I think I'm going to do something different. I think
Yeah.
I really like this teaching thing. I think I'm really good at it, but I also like writing music and playing chamber music and doing solo concerts and doing these other things. And I'm going to go this route, even though before I was kind of, I don't know if I was taught to believe, but I thought to be successful, I needed to be this other thing. So I did it and I kept going, and it's worked out great for me, but it was one of those things. And I thought back about what Rosen said to me about, you got to do what you believe in. And I think it meant like, what do you love? What resonates with you? And for me, it was writing this music and doing this other stuff and the teaching thing. And I told him that later. I mean, I remember I got to be the person that gave him his Hall of Fame award several years ago at PAS at the convention. And I told him, I said, "Hey man, thanks. I want you to know that I remember you said that to me, and I think that was an important thing for me to hear. And I think I took your advice and it worked out. So
That's really cool.
that,
That's really cool.
that answers that question. But that's so
So, I mean, we're talking about things that you love, things that you believe in, finding your identity. All of these things are
just so you know. So just
Coke Zero. Very good. Please don't sue us, Coke. It's a
yeah,
small
right.
podcast.
They'll be happy.
I'm curious to know some things that you might be passionate about, but in another direction, things you still want to see changed. What's something that you'd like to see different in the percussion or classic music industry?
Wow, it's a big question. Something I see different. I think we're moving in some good directions, but I guess, yeah, I'd like to see us get both new music and continue to get different kinds of groups in front of people, in,
Hmm.
and I maybe also in creative environments, creative venues, whether it be indoor or outdoor, in places where people that don't get to hear what we do often will get to hear it
Hmm.
and maybe fall in love with it. Because I've had that experience many times myself personally, playing for people that wouldn't typically maybe be interested in, even in like what we're doing as percussionists, hear it and go, "Oh my gosh, I got to do this," And I think that's what keeps music alive. I mean, I think we have to continue to support orchestras and keep the backbone and the tradition of Western classical music in place while still growing that repertoire so that we're programming pieces from now,
Yeah.
and we're encouraging people to write for that medium now. But we're also pushing the envelope and finding ways to celebrate and feature, whether it be groups like, the group Eighth Blackbird, which has done so well, or all these percussion groups that have sort of, Third Coast and So Percussion and Sandbox, these groups in our country, anyways, that have on their own, grown to be successful chamber groups in our field, which is like when I was a kid, it was something we had Nexus, which was, they were my heroes, still are, and they were functioning. And those guys played in orchestras and taught and did that. I don't know if they really did it full time, but they were busy. Now we have groups doing this. We know in Europe in the 60s and 70s, they had percussion groups and 80s, and even maybe into the 90s, early 2000s. Groups like Chromata in Sweden, they no longer exist. The Percussion of Strasbourg group, which still exists and is partially sponsored by the government. At one time, groups fully funded by the government. Even Adinda in Hungary, we never had the government sponsorship that they had to do that. So those groups growing is exciting. I think more things like that I want to see happen, so that classical music, what is that? Contemporary classical music, whatever we call art music that we love, the stuff that we enjoy, that we believe in, and that we want to see people also have a passion for, like we do. I want to see it get out there more. And I think, finding ways to do that, finding, venues where you're playing and people, and this sounds weird, but don't necessarily have to be quiet while we're playing. Maybe they're hanging out and we're doing a show, but maybe they will be quiet because they're like doing, all of a sudden they hear this, they're like, oh, not because they have to, because that's what's expected, but because they want to, because they're like, wow, this is cool. I just played a performance for the university, actually, in New York City about a week and a half ago at this big hotel downtown Manhattan. It was an event for alumni and for the board of trustees, and I think it was people that have capacity, and the president there, the provost, the dean of Eastman was there. I brought a group. We played a piece, and I did this thing, and I talked a bit, and we played, and we kind of rocked, and the place went nuts. And this woman comes up to me from the board of trustees. She goes, we have to send you everywhere. This has to go everywhere. Everyone has to see this and has to see these performances. This is what we need for the university. This is what we need for music, blah, blah, blah. Which was exciting because there's a woman who obviously had never seen it, completely enamored and taken by it. And then I had another person ask me, hey, I run this series in the Hudson Valley. Can you bring your group and play in the Hudson Valley? I'm like, yes, I can. So you get it in front of people, even presenters that don't expect to like certain kinds of music or are so used to piano string-oriented things. And that can expand too. But I think just, yes, I'd like to see percussion get out there more, and it is, which is exciting. But just music, classical music, get out there more, and in crossover situations, in places where maybe it's not typically heard, so that we can have more people that sort of jump on our bandwagon and grab our passion and say, wow, I really love this, So
I love that. Well, you need to be a government advocate for the arts. You're
I'm
next.
to be there, I wouldn't want to do it in the current administration, but if I was asked and I can make a difference, I'd be happy to do that. And I think it's exciting things. I think we have a chance there, and I think the way my students and the younger people that are coming up in music yourself are thinking, I think that's the answer to help keep us vital.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean, I feel like one of my passions is access to great information. I feel like the internet has really democratized access to great information and access to great performances. It's not ever the same. I don't pretend like it's the same, that live performances and internet performances are the same, but it's a great start to get people interested, to expose people to things they haven't seen before. And I couldn't agree more. You and I are in total alignment. We're activating it in slightly different ways, but not that different, not so different.
I put a lot of content out myself
on
the internet, so I agree, and it's amazing the reach of that, whether it be permanent video that we put on YouTube, or a quick thing that goes on to like Instagram or something. That the reach of those things is remarkable. Even someone of my generation, it's still stunning to me. It's like, wow. I think about 8,000 people. I just I popped up something on the weekend from a rehearsal we had Friday before spring break. So a piece of mine, they were like, hey, check this out. I thought it was cool. So I did a little video of it, popped it up. As of yesterday, it was like almost 9,000 views of this thing. I'm like, you think about that, like, and I'm sure they're like looking quick and some are looking longer.
Sure.
All these whatever it is, it's getting in front of people.
Yeah.
And not just people like you and I. There's other people that are on there that are seeing this go down their reels and go, oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's like 3 very nice sized concert halls worth of people. When you think of it that way, yeah, I completely understand.
And there's all these different things working together that can help accomplish these goals for us, and and I think it's part of what it is today. So we have to kind of celebrate it, really, I think.
Absolutely. So what's the biggest criticism you've ever faced in your career, and how did you deal with it?
Biggest criticism? Gosh. Maybe there's, it's hard. I've gone through, all of us, I'm sure many of us, especially someone of my age. You've had times you go through where tough times, or whatever it be. We all go through ups and downs as artists, as teachers, as humans, right? Biggest criticism. I think maybe even as a teacher, I was just trying to think. I think when I was a young teacher, I'm not sure if someone actually criticized me and said, "You are doing this." But I think one thing that I had to learn, and I'm sure it came from my students sort of telling me in their own way that, "Hey, dude, I I assumed everyone wanted to be just like me and do what I'm doing, right? Everyone wanted to, hey, don't you want to be like me and write music and play the marimba, or be a percussionist and do this, and aren't you excited about being a performer, or go on and And I realized that the way to get to them was I had to get to them where they were. It doesn't mean I held my standards lower or changed expectations in terms of some of the things I was expecting them to do, but I had to understand where they were coming from and how I would use that information myself as the teacher from where they were at, whether it be the level they were at or the reasons they were doing it. Just to be a high school teacher, I don't want to say just to be, that sounds horrible, to be a high school teacher, or they wanted to be a performer, or maybe they want to be a drum set player, but they're taking classical percussion because it's part of the curriculum. When I taught at Kent, it was kind of that way more, things like that, or
Right.
students that have different ideas than you and want to go in different directions, and being open to that. And even students, I even have students now that are Eastman. Like, I have a student that's a really wonderful student of mine who's doing audio engineering and percussion. I'm okay with that. Like, if this person ends up deciding that audio engineering is what they're going to do, but they're still going to be a percussionist, maybe play some drum set or use, they're a wonderful player. They're playing great. They work hard. I have no problem with them in that way. And I'm okay. I don't need them to be this because I want them to be that, But I think at one time everyone thought like me. And I think along with that too is understanding that people have different backgrounds and they come in differently than you. Because I came in with a really good kind of rudimental snare drum and all this kind of stuff back then. And so I wasn't teaching things like that. And then I realized I needed to give this to my students because I had it didn't mean they did. I don't know why in my brain I just thought doesn't everyone played through All American Drummer? What's going on? But
Right.
so
Right.
like, and even realizing they had to work on stuff that I just assumed everyone did.
Right.
And then things that I had to work on, they didn't need to work on some of the stuff that we did. We're less of that, more of this kind of thinking that way as a teacher. So that's maybe one thing I really had to learn and change. And now this is sort of, I'm very comfortable with that and feel very, actually, it's sort of relieving. I don't want to have to create a zillion people that think just like me or just want
Sure.
exactly what I want. I like that it's a mix,
Right.
and some want to be orchestral players, some want to be college teachers, some are maybe going to end up being, I have just talking to one of my students who's in LA trying to be a film composer. He's a fantastically talented guy, Austin Keck, who's written a bunch of great percussion music too. And, I'm great with them doing what they want to do as long as they're working hard and they're as a player I was always getting criticized because I always rush, so that's probably that's an ongoing criticism because I'm kind of this guy that wants to go, so but
That's a great one. Honestly, that's a great one because one of the hardest things about that type of criticism is that it's a silent one.
yeah,
And it just is in the air, but it's never necessarily enunciated. It's never verbalized. It's never, given to you in this clear terms. It's just something that like you said, you had to kind of perceive, and it maybe happened over time. And it's almost, in a way, it's almost a self criticism, or maybe sometimes as educators, because I also teach a lot of students. I've got over 20 students that I'm teaching
wow,
right
yeah,
now. And it's very difficult what you're describing. It's very difficult because I want all of them to make All-State. Let's go. Everyone be an All-State, and some of them look at me like, Mr. V, like,
right,
dude, drumline's fun. That's that's the end of it. And I want to get better at that. And I was like, but we must strive. And they're like,
yeah, right,
and they're giving me the eyeballs, and I'm having to like also navigate the exact same thing, but they respect you and they love you and they want to give you 100% of their effort too. And it's very difficult for students to look at someone they revere, they respect so much, especially someone like yourself, who, when students are coming in to study with you, there's like legendary status to come study with MJB, right? I mean, it's hard to be like, hey, I don't necessarily, like you're not going to have that sort of dialogue because maybe you're just not ready for it. It's not students' fault. It's not the teacher's fault. It's a difficult conversation sometimes. So the fact that you perceived that gets into another question, which I wanted to ask you, which was that I'm curious about this. Like, and maybe in a way you're already answering this question, but since it's kind of tied together, like I have always thought of you as a world-class performer and composer, but lately, the older I get and the more I see your students all over the place, and now I'm working with them and they're becoming my colleagues, and I'm meeting a lot more of them through Percussion Conservatory. I feel like arguably your greatest success is as an educator. And I'm wondering, besides what you just spoke on, what's some other things you do to foster excellence in your studio?
Oh, it's funny. My wife always used to tell me, because I was so worried, always worried about my performing. And you still, that's kind of the base of who you are in some ways, because you care about your playing. And I always believe that you have to have risen to a certain sense of artistry in order to impart it to others. Does that make sense? You have to
Yes.
be there. So I still believe that to be true. And so I always worked really hard at that. My wife always said to me, your greatest legacy is going to be your students and your pieces, your composition.
Wow.
And I thought, I hate when she's right. It's tough. So you do your best, and you get. And I think with the teaching thing, it's an interesting thing. But I realize, it's funny if I really look at myself, and I think about what's the most important thing to me. Like I'm getting ready for this. Actually, I'm doing video tomorrow. I'm doing Mirage tomorrow, and I'm doing a Bach thing and stuff.
Awesome.
With Continuous Motion Productions is coming, a great videography company, and I still do a lot of that. And I'm going to leave in like a week for Sweden and do 2 concerts over there, and then it goes on. I'm going to Ohio and I'm back, and I got to so I'm always thinking about that. And plus I have pieces I'm writing. But what really matters to me the most is that things are cooking with gas at Eastman. So like if I feel like that's not hitting on all cylinders, that bugs me the most. I've always wanted to have this base of this really, absolutely, I don't want the word, I'm trying to think of the right word now, but like a very active, high level studio of students, a place that really got a lot going on. People are very, very integrated in what they're doing. They're super invested in what they're doing. And, the ensemble's cooking, their individual playing is going. They have, and I love it. I feel like I have this crazy studio at Eastman where all these students are incredibly motivated, hard, in some in different areas than others, but accomplishing great things and inspiring each other. So I love that, and I realize that that's the most important thing to me. And I think it takes some time to realize that, but I knew that, I think, even when I got the Eastman job. It wasn't like I was going to stop doing the other stuff, because that's part of what feeds me, and it's kind of a symbiotic thing, really, right? I mean, my playing, my writing, and my teaching, especially it works together in a way. But I don't know if there's any magic to it. I think there's 2 things. One, that maybe there's more than 2, but I think of 2 big things. One is that it really means a lot to me. I really care about my students, and I'm really invested in them. And sometimes probably more so than I should be, because you can really, you can wear it. But I think that pays dividends in the long run, because they see that you're there for them. They know that you're invested. But that means I expect them to be just as invested. As a matter of fact, they need to be more invested than I am, and I'm pretty darn invested. So, and I think that's always paid, because they have felt that from me, that I would go to the mat for them, and I feel like I have a zillion of them that would go to the mat for me, and that really means the world to me. I can get choked up talking about it, quite frankly, not just because there's obviously some that have clear success. We could talk about list people and groups and things that are like, but there's many of them that are doing great things that don't necessarily get all the hype, that are doing great things as teachers and playing in smaller orchestras, or have started chamber groups that don't have as much help. All this stuff, all of them I'm very proud of. And all of them feed me in a very, very deep way, because it's true when you teach, and you probably learn this. I learn probably more from them than they ever learned from me. It's like, my God, I am the musician I am today because of all the students that have passed through my door. So that's the first thing. I think investment, and high expectation for them. That's part of the investment. I have a high expectation for myself and them.
Yeah.
And they know that.
Yeah.
But then you build that into the studio. So then the second thing I was going to say is creating this incubator, this environment, I think is super important. That, first and foremost, is an absolutely safe place to be. A place where you walk in, you leave your ego at the door, and everyone's safe and in the same place. That means, yes, there's a ton of talent and there's different strengths and weaknesses. And sometimes you see somebody that's just like, oh my gosh, I always tell the grad students, when you come in, you're going to see some undergrads, they're going to make you very uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's
No,
very true.
you get used to it. That's okay though. And
Yeah.
that's why you're here. And I say, I want you guys to inspire each other, encourage each other, learn from each other.
Yeah.
That's the place we need to be together. We need to be that kind of place. We can have a lot of fun working together. I want to work hard and I want to have fun doing it. And I want you guys to celebrate this time because I tell them you don't get this time back. This is like a time in your life you're always going to remember because you're here together in this place, like I say, this incubator. And that's true for all of these, but especially our studio.
Right.
You'll remember who you went to school. I know you do, and I do. And you were influenced by those people. And some of those people were lifelong friends. And the times you've shared together, learning from each other in the practice room, the ups and downs together, the encouraging times, the times you say, hey, bud, you got to get it together. All that stuff that you do for each other is super important. And so I think the culture to me is maybe even as important as anything else. The fact that they have that culture and the expectations there. So when you come in, it's almost like I don't have to say anything because the rest of them are doing it and everyone else sees it and goes, okay, this is how this works.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I think you can go on to other stuff. The curriculum is this and we do that. And,
Sure. But that's the crux of it. Yeah, I understand.
it is the crux of it. And I think, I always tell them too, one other thing I say, and this is more of a pedagogical concept, is that you eat your pie backwards. And I think this is true of school and of percussion. Come in. I don't want you to tell me I want to do this. I want you to come in and I want you to learn all these things. So you eat the back of the pie. And as we go through the pie, we're going to figure out both what you're good at and what you like doing. And those may intersect in a variety of places. They just be one thing. But you may come to me and say, I really want to do this. And I may say, I'm glad, but I'm not sure you can be successful doing that. Let's talk about it. It might be a hard conversation, but those are important conversations to have. But hopefully through their experiences, they come to those realizations on their own and they go there. And then different people find different sections and different things that they're going to do, that they're going to, why they'll be successful and what will make them happy and all those kinds of things. So.
Well, I really loved one of the things you said was, building an incubator and building an environment and being able to come into a space that's safe and you feel good. And I just want to take a moment to let everyone know that this podcast is sponsored by someone who's helped me create an amazing incubator for my students and for myself and my practice studio, which is Majestic Percussion. Thank you so much for sponsoring this podcast. And they also help us with our scholarship competition every year to get instruments to deserving students who audition from all over the world. And we pick the very best, the best in a blind audition. And Majestic sends out a few drums every year to these students so that they can help advance their career. And they've been instrumental in my own. And so big thank you to them. And I want to pass it to you, MJB, if you want to shout out any of your sponsors.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, you see the Malatech, the MJB Malatech behind me. Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Malatech's, important to me. And I really feel grateful to them. And both that they support what I do, but also they have allowed me to kind of have a place to also use my creative energy in developing instruments and mallets and other things. Zildjian, who's been great for years with me, and I respect both Craigie and the whole company and their commitment to education and their commitment to excellence with the products and diversity of what they make, and had so much fun working with them on their 400th anniversary. I wrote a piece for Third Coast that they commissioned me to write for them for their 400th anniversary, which was really super fun. I also work with Evans Drumheads, they support Eastman in a huge way with drumheads every year, and they're great for us and high quality stuff. I really, really, really appreciate it. So, yeah.
I love that. So we got two last fun questions, and then I send you off for the day. And so I'm wondering, since we're at the end of the time here of the interview, we can talk about time a little bit. Where would you go if you could time travel, and why would you go there, or why would you go then?
I'd probably go back to the 40s.
Wow.
Because I love the styles. I like the fedoras.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd love to be like the drummer in like one of those big bands, man, like the Gene Krupa guy. Like, I just always loved that era as a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always think, man, I should have been just a drummer. What was I doing? Like, because drum sets at my roots, but like about that era, the 40s, like, the Glenn Miller band or being in Tommy Dorsey's band, or, when they were like just part of our culture. And plus I just love the styles and I love the movies from that time period and stuff. So They'd probably be the 40s. If
Oh,
I could.
we need to get like a photo shoot. We need to like write a piece for you, or you need to write a piece for yourself, like with where this is a theme. It's like some theatrics, and you got the fedora, and you're in the, you're in some like suspenders, and it's, oh my, I can see the
Yeah,
whole
I'll
thing.
have to do that. Maybe my next album cover, I have a fedora with suspenders. Yeah. So.
Oh man, and if you do, I mean, you got to shout this out. You got to shout out PC, because that's a great, that's a winning idea. I promise.
Okay, I'll remember that.
And I'd love to know, what's one thing you wish people knew about you? What's something that we don't know? We just, we see you from afar. We see you rocking the marimba and the drums and the teaching and the this, but you wish, you wish more
Hmm.
people knew this about you. What would that be?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I'm a pretty open book, but I mean, I don't know if there's anything I wish that they knew about me. No, I think I mean, maybe that I have a deep love for my family, and I think that's important. I just got back from visiting my daughter Kelsey and my two granddaughters in Chicago, which is great.
I saw you sledding with them over the winter,
Yeah, it
and
was.
it's just, the heart was just so big. It's like the Grinch, just like it explodes. Like, who can look at that and be sad? Yeah, how can
Yeah,
you be sad when you see that image? It was
I think
touching. That was
family's
such a
super
sweet
important.
video.
I think it's a super important thing. That, and I think also like, and I don't always do this well, but have other things that you do in your life that you enjoy. I just got back from playing tennis.
Yeah.
I learned about 3 or 4 years ago, so I'm okay. I have fun with it. I love doing it. For years I was jogging every day almost. My knees are killing me now. I bike more and do other things.
Mm.
But I think having recreational things that you do to get away from music. I love to read. I don't know that I wish that people knew that, but I think maybe that's kind of important that it's just to try to have other things that interest you outside of music. But I'm a pretty obsessive music guy. My wife would tell you, and she has to drag me out of it sometimes so I can get myself.
I mean, you tried to take a vacation to Hawaii, and you're still tapping on a Gatorade
That's
bottle. All
true,
right.
right? Right.
I
But
mean, come on.
my
You're
friend, so I'm hoping to get a Gatorade commercial out of that.
you should. There were comments on that video. They were trying to shout you out. Everyone's tagging Gatorade, and you had.
I mean,
I know
Gatorade,
that you're a tennis
they could
player because
use me. I mean, come on. I mean, I love G2. I drink it all the time. I could be a big asset to that company. I think, don't you think?
there's going to be two sponsors. There's Mallet Tech and Gatorade.
There you go. We know who's going to come home with the big bucks. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I love it.
I had
MJB.
this opportunity once when I don't want to take much, but I was like,
Oh no, you're fine.
when I was in Chicago at Northwestern, I knew some guys that were doing jingle work downtown. This guy called me like a Saturday and said, "Hey, I'm doing this commercial for Sears Craftsman Tools, and I need an industrial dance by Monday morning. Can you do it?" I'm like, "Sure,
Sure.
I'll pay you whatever." And he said, "Bring some students." I said, "What can I bring?" Well, how about 4 people? Okay, I'll play and 3 others. Monday, what about instruments? We'll get cartridge. Tell me what you need. All right. So I spent the rest of the day. I wrote like about 30, 40 seconds of music for quartet. And it actually ended up being a piece of mine called The Doomsday Machine, which just used to be played sometimes, kind of a fun piece. But
Yeah.
anyways, but I went downtown with my students, my grad students at the time, and they came with me. Actually, one of them was Scott Herring, who teaches in South Carolina, a really good guy. But he was with me, and we go downtown, and there's this place called Streeterville Studios. We went down there, and we got in there, got our stuff, and get ready. It was kind of this funky, like jigga-doom, jigga-doom, jigga-doom. We had cans and like Cajun sounds and anvils, and I had snare drums and all this stuff going on, kind of funky thing. And they showed it with the commercial, which was the racetrack, the cars going around. I even had a roll. Scott jigga-doom, and the roll kind of lined up just by luck with the car like going around the end, and then they had me at a rim shot when they threw the tools in the pit stop and all this stuff. And I thought the people there were like, this is going to be great. I'm thinking, okay, this is going to work. My God, I'm going to have a Sears ad. This is crazy. And my students, they were like, this is great. But they were also just loving the free food. They were like picking out, this is great.
Yeah.
So this is happening. And then, the guy from the company that commissioned the ad came in and was like, wow. He asked, remember, he says to me, he goes, he had this toothpick and he's like, cool guy. He's like, who are you? And I said, I wanted to say, I'm Batman.
Yeah, right.
But I just said, I told him it was. And I thought I was going to get this commercial. And then they ended up going a different direction.
Oh.
Whose guitar? I'm like,
do you still have do you have it in the can? Like, do you have like, you don't have like the never aired commercial? Like, we don't have the footage of this?
You got to find it. I wonder if I could find that. It would be kind of fun to have that, right?
We got to get
there was
that.
footage. I don't know if I could legally get it. I should.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, we should get that. That's phenomenal. That would be so
About
fun.
the first 30 seconds of Doomsday Machine or something like that. Then I ended up writing the rest of the piece, and that's fine. But
Love it.
anyways, you never know. I could have ended up being a jingle writer. Made some money on the side.
Never know.
Could have been
You
one of your.
never know.
I could have been like a philanthropist for you or something. Who knows?
You still can. You're doing great.
Uh,
Donate to the piece. I'm joking.
I did. I will. So,
You've
anyways,
already done a lot for us, and we're very excited that you're coming to teach with us soon, and more details will be coming out about that. But you're already doing us more than a solid. You're already being more than generous by sharing your talents with us, sharing your time with us, sharing these stories with us. It's a pleasure to be getting to know you, and it's really an honor and super fun to be learning about your percussion story. There's I know you've done a zillion interviews, a zillion and a half probably at this point, but we try to make these fun and learn a little bit more about people in the industry. And I really appreciate how open you were. And I learned a ton of fun things today. This was great. And most importantly from this one, I feel like I became a better educator. I'm really happy I asked the questions that I did, because I think you're just such a genuine person, and you really live by what you say. And I hope that everyone comes to see these classes that you're going to do with us, because I think your energy is infectious, and I think everyone would be better spending a little time with you and learning a lot about how you do what you do. So thank you
thanks.
so much, MJB.
My pleasure to be here, Josh. Thanks for having me, man.
Awesome. All right.
Keep doing
Until the
it.
next one, it's been another percussion story. Thanks, MJB.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.